Welcome to MMA Fancast and Merry Christmas week to everyone out there, and a special Merry Christmas and a big congratulations to our guest, Miguel Francisco. Miguel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You are back on the show in about the Christmas week, perfect for you. You were the co-main event, the last amateur fight before the main event at Brawl in the Burgh 15 for 247 Fighting Championships, December 17th, which was 8 days before Christmas. So your fight's not long. So before we get to what happened, because it only lasted 33 seconds of incredible fight for you, I've had you on before. You're a highly ranked amateur. You had a really slick armbar in your last fight. You were kind enough to come on before and after that fight. So just give me a little bit of what training's been like after your, because there wasn't a lot of time, after your last armbar win, and then before this fight, just that little bit of that window of training.
Yeah, so honestly, I went right into it. I actually messaged the 247 guys, and I asked for Chance Gaethje to fight because I wanted to fight him. I saw that he won his fight a few weeks before I won that armbar fight, so I messaged them and I asked if I could fight him at 140 because I wanted to slowly taper down to 135 just to see how my body feels at those weights. And Chance immediately was like, immediately accepted the fight. So I was like, all right back in the camp, no injuries, so might as well just get right back into it. So I just went right back to it, and here we are now.
Well, that really showed a lot of behind the scenes, so I appreciate you sharing that. One, obviously, not being injured, even quick fights, you could still get injured in, and your last fight was quick, but still, it's always great to know what you can do. It also shows, the 247 teams, fantastic. Their head matchmaker is Jim Mooney, and it's fun having called their first ever event. It's fun now that 247's been around, and I know that's what Ryan and Hunter and everybody over there wants to do. It's fun that they've been around so long now, long enough to be able to match fighters that have already been fighting for the company. And then that's really special, whether it be you. Chance had already fought for them 2 times before. So it's cool to start seeing how, I would assume, matches come together a little bit easier when people have already fought for the same organization. So very cool. Why did it excite you? Why did you want to fight somebody who's coming off a win? How important is it to make sure you're constantly testing yourself?
I wanted to fight someone that was coming off of a win just to prove a point that I'm not picking easy fights, And Chance had a really good last performance, his last fight, and he's a really good jiu-jitsu on the ground. So I wanted to showcase my striking in this fight, and that's why I asked to fight somebody like him, because he's a very well-rounded fighter as well. So I wanted to just showcase just my striking, because all my wins were by submission. So like if it did go to the ground and I ended up having to showcase my grappling again, it was kind of a win-win situation where if I got my striking, I got to showcase my striking. But if it was on the ground, then I could say I got to grapple with a brown belt, So it was a win-win situation for me. That's why I asked.
And what's fun about having you on now for the 3rd time is the mind you have. You have the physical talent. People have been talking that now your record is now 4-2. You won 1, your debut, lost 2, won 1, then came on the show to talk to me. And at that point, I think it was very clear that you were people knew, even at 2-2 at a 500 record, that your skills were there. It was just a matter of putting it together. So I think that's what you've been showing. What's also cool is, I think it's Hunter, but whoever writes the 247 Fighting Championship Facebook post pointed out exactly what you just said, that when this fight was matched, that the grappling of both of you is very high level. He, of course, being a brown belt, you being known for grappling. So now we're there to the fight. It's an advanced amateur, which you did have a previous advanced amateur fight. Yeah. So advanced amateur fights are 3-minute. So a 9-minute fight, but you only took 33 seconds. So let's, from your perspective, break down those 33 seconds, because you're the guy in the cage that can tell us from the audience what it was like for you in those 33 seconds and how the finish came about.
So honestly, because I'm more of a mind fighter, so I'm always just watching tapes of my opponents, and so I was watching like a lot of his last fight with Anthony Morris. I was noticing that he starts off strong with kicks, so I was thinking that was what he was going to do at first. So I planned that he was going to be throwing those kicks at first. So as soon as he threw that first kick, I thought to myself, I'm just going to absorb that kick and I'm going to shoot a straight left as hard as I can. And that's what happened with my precision. I hit him with that straight left and I immediately rocked him. And then I went, just capitalized on hurting him, and I got mount and finished him from there.
Well, you made 33 seconds sound like 33 seconds. There's not a lot of fight time. It also really shows what game prep goes into it, fight prep goes into it, just like, Peyton Manning's famous for his game prep and, all those. It also shows how no matter what it looks like on paper, you have to do it in the cage. So really a beautiful performance. We've talked about it before, but the advanced amateur rules allow that following to the ground with strikes, which obviously goes a long way to a more professional quality level fight. Now here you are 4-2. You got a high caliber win against a high caliber fighter. And of course, your last fight, your opponent had 11 amateur fights, which is an insane number of fights. You were 2-2. He had 11 amateur fights. You were fighting a guy with several times more experience than you. So it's the age-old question. You are performing like a very high talented advanced amateur or a first pro. Like we always kind of look at pros that are maybe 0 fights to 3 or 4 fights, and they should kind of look a certain way. You're starting to look like one of those early pros. So where are you with you and your team a few days after the fight, as far as, is it going for the 135-pound belt for 247 to kind of pick another high caliber opponent and kind of test yourself there? Is it going pro? And you had mentioned the weight cut. So back up 2 seconds. What was it like cutting to 140? Going from fighting at 45 to trying to make 130, what is your mind on that now? Before we ask you the pro question, we'll ease in.
All right. Yeah. So I started this camp for the first time with a Immortal diet optimization. For nutritionist, Lucas introduced me to him.
Yeah.
And I mentioned him that I want to eventually fight at 135, and he said okay, and he started working with me. So this whole camp, from after the Martinez fight up until this fight, I had about 6.5 weeks. So I just worked my diet with him, got my weight down slowly, and after that he had a specific plan for me on what exact weight I need to be and when to make weight and my rehydration. And it was the best I've ever felt in for a fight. Rehydration wise, I rehydrated literally all my weight back. I was back to the weight that I walk around at after my fight. I mean, after weigh-ins, and so I just really appreciative of him for doing that and help me out with that, because if it wasn't for him, then I probably would have been a really bad cut, because that's a lot of weight that I cut to make that weight class.
Yeah. That also shows, and this is something that I think is exciting and important for anybody out there that wants to get into amateur MMA, is treat yourself more like a pro earlier. It doesn't mean, like, I'd say if somebody's in the first couple of fights, it's important to just fight. If you're doing too much early in your amateur career, it can be a little bit too much too soon. I've known amateurs, they're 0-0. They're trying to get all these consultants. You can do that, but sometimes letting that happen later allows you to kind of develop as you go. But I think at your point, it makes a lot of sense that some of the wrestling mindset cuts that I've been around, where they're very tough, but they just try to like cut it all. It's interesting because DC Cormier, when he was a wrestler, wrestling at a much higher weight at the Olympics, had kidney failure, ended up coming into MMA, wrestling at a much lower weight at 205, because he got the right help to do it differently. So I think that's really cool. So just on weight alone, and shout out to Lucas, the Sniper Siebert. We've had him on the show. He's a great guy. Immortal MMA, for people that don't know, is run and owned by Matt the Immortal Brown, a UFC legend, as well as Mark the Hammer Coleman, just an incredible gym. So it's cool to see how connections matter. So for early fighters, young fighters, make connections among other young up and coming fighters. It can only help you. But weight wise, is your next fight going to be at 35? What does your nutritionist say as far as where you are?
I'm looking to do that, try to see if 247 can offer me a 135-pound title fight. And then if that goes well, I'm probably gonna turn pro after that.
Okay. Well, that was right down sort of the alley I was thinking. So it's great that we're on the same page. Now, I am certainly not going to be matchmaking, wink, wink, on this podcast, but I have had former 247 bantamweight champ Cam the Mole Rat Agar on this show. Is that who you'd want to sort of call out matchmaker? Who are you looking now? Now, I'm not here to say if he's looking for a fight or not. He was 6-0 to start his run, dropped a really tough fight, a really good fight to Hunter Steiner, who's now Hunter Starner, who's now a pro. So have you been looking at the 135-pound division in 247, and what do you kind of see and like about it?
I've been looking around. I honestly I'd be down to do a title fight at either 135 or 145. I'm not too picky on which weight I do it at. Yeah, I mean, there's a few people I was looking to fight. I'm not like one to call out people.
Sure.
So but I mean, I've been looking. Maybe maybe I could get a fight with Cameron Sandoval. He fought Edwin earlier this year, so that I feel like that would be a good title fight. Or somebody I was supposed to fight Clinton Ewing a year ago. I feel like that would be a good title fight because me and him have the same record now. We're both 4-2. I feel like that would be a good fight for a title since we were supposed to fight previously, and then it'd be for a belt. So that I feel like that would be pretty good hype. As for the same if I ended up fighting Cameron Sandoval, because it'd be like me avenging the Matt Factory guys. So I feel like those would be probably my two options, I'd say.
Well, I think it's great that you have some people in mind, some thoughts. I also think it's cool that you're calling for the title shot, but you allow the matchmakers to kind of come up with what makes the most sense. So I think there's a couple different ways to do it. We've seen it where people kind of create beefs and you call an actual fighter, you call for a fighter, you're calling for the opportunity. So I think that's really cool. And just what you shared there, it's also fun to know that behind the scenes that happens a lot. So people don't know. It happens even at the UFC level, but at the amateur level, people get matched that for some reason doesn't actually end up fighting quite often. So it's kind of cool that you've kind of come across some names before. Like we said earlier in this chat, I think it's really cool that 247's at the point that their amateur ranks have obviously a lot of talent in it, and it's kind of cool to see that, whether it be 35 or 45. That's also cool that you're willing to kind of float in between them. Just because I'm a big fan of the current pro 145-pound featherweight 247 champion of the world, and he's been a broadcast partner of mine. So I always love talking about the Wolverine. What have you seen in him? Because at 145, he is the best that 247 has to offer, and probably one of the best fighters that's not at a main organization now. So kind of what are your thoughts on him? Have you gotten to see him fight? Because at 45, he's obviously been doing this a long time, and it's been incredible to see his resurgence to get the title. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are at the pro level and the champ currently.
Well, that's definitely something to strive for because he's been putting in a lot of work for a long time. So that's definitely a very motivating for younger fighters like me to want to be like that. So it's good on his part that he stuck to it, and his skills have gotten so much better because he's been fighting 247 for a while, I think.
Well, Ethan the Wolverine Goss, every time we talk and every time he's my broadcast partner, I'm going to say he's been fighting starting as an amateur at least a decade ago. And then he turned pro. He might have even turned pro quite a few years ago. Yes, he has fought maybe 6 times for 247. He and Kama were, and I'm just going off the top of my head, no offense to Hunter or Ryan or Jim, but I would say Kama and he at the pro level fought the most for them. They just fought a ton. So I'd say he's probably fought 5 or 6 times for the promotion. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely very respectable and something that I strive to do, because he's definitely very active, and I'd like to be very active as a pro. Same with my buddy Justin Patton. He's super
Yeah.
active, and he fights at 135 to 145. So that's someone I also strive to be like as well.
Well, that's a great shout out. I love me some General Justin Patton, referencing back to World War II. For people that don't know, Google General Patton from World War II. It's a great read, but it's also a great movie. But yeah, I think that's really cool because he's coming down from 45 to 35, and he just had an incredibly big win his last time out against a guy who on paper, training at Rufo Sport, being on a 3-0 run, look dangerous. But that's the type of fights, whether he's at pro, you're at advanced amateur, it's kind of good to be testing yourself against good opponents. And I believe he's kind of at the upper height of 135, right? You spar with him, you train with him. What's it like going up against the guy? His frame is an odd one for 35, I'd say.
Yeah, he's definitely a big 35er. So that's probably why he can easily float from 35 to 45 to fight at. Yeah, he's a little bit bigger than me, so I feel like he'll probably eventually just stick to 45, because I feel like that's really hard for him for 35.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that. Now he's retired, but first thing that comes to mind is Cowboy Cerrone, how Donald Cowboy Cerrone had a resurgence at 170 because at his age, cutting down to 155 was really, really hard at 6'1". So yeah, there's a lot that kind of goes into it. As always, it's so great chatting with you. You are a great representation of an up-and-coming amateur. Everybody's positive. You train at all the local gyms, which is just fantastic. You're a great example of what Pittsburgh MMA really can and should be. So honored chatting with you. Congratulations. You're going into 2023 at about as best as you possibly could be, with 2 first-round finishes over highly tough, durable opponents, calling for a title shot, hopefully, early 2023. And then is that how you see it? A title fight for 247? And they usually have a card sometime in like the winter or early spring, and then try to go immediately pro. That's your plan?
Yeah, try to get a pro fight maybe sometime in the summer.
That makes sense. When I look at Dana White Contender Series fighters, which is a really cool opportunity for a lot of pro fighters that have like 6 or 7 pro fights and a good record, you'll see that that's what fighters are doing. They build up their amateur, they get the experience, your record restarts at pro. You want to go like 2, 3, 4 pro fights in your first year pro. That way you're then set up to kind of see what your next chunk goes for. So it's really cool. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Congratulations to you and all the winners at Brawl in the Burgh 15 for 247 Fighting Championships. Congratulations to you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And I can't wait to have Miguel Francisco back on the show next time, hopefully talking about a title shot for 247.
Thanks again.
Take care, brother. All right.